Hi guys, thank you for watching my channel. Today we are going to be talking about Neptune in the 7th house. So what is Neptune? Neptune is our dreams, it's our spirituality, it's our boundless self. It's how we transcend everyday reality through love, romance, sex, fantasy, idealism, as well as drugs and alcohol and creativity. This is where we may lack direction in our life or where we may be confused. It's where we love unconditionally and where we are truly devoted. This is also where we can be vulnerable, where we can be guilt-ridden. It's also where we can deceive or be deceived. What is the 7th house? The 7th house is our house of relationships and commitment. This could be through marriage. This could be through someone who's just very important within your life. The 7th house is about if your life was like a boat and only the most intimate people ended up on your boat. This is the 7th house. These are the people in your 7th house. These are contracts, people you make legal contracts to, someone who has all of the qualities that you're looking for in another person, someone who their characteristics are a lot of your shadow side, the part of you that you haven't yet accepted of yourself that you can easily accept in another person. The 7th house is our most substantial interdependent relationships within our lives. It is ruled by Libra and Venus, and so it's about equality. Neptune in the 7th house. You are someone who is meant and destined to have deeply spiritual and meaningful relationships throughout your life. This is something where you may be attracted to others who are highly sensitive, intuitive, creative. They could be even dreamy and kind of spacey, or just anything very Neptunian in nature. This could be something that attracts you to them. And that's on the more positive side of Neptune, of course, and then the other side of Neptune is, maybe you are also attracted to people in need of being saved, or someone who may be struggling with some kind of addiction or some kind of crutch where they're not fully functioning or aware in life. And Neptune in the 7th, this is where you really need to be cautious with the relationships that you enter into, because this placement really is meant for you to have deep, moving, highly evolved spiritual relationships where, as a partnership, you both are lifting each other up and you are helping each other kind of go to that next level in a spiritual manner. We meet people who are struggling, all of us do, all of us struggle, right? It's always like a spectrum. However, this is where you really need to have discernment and need to make sure that you have a healthy group of people around you. And if you don't, I highly recommend a therapist or someone that you can talk openly to about your relationships, because relationships here is also going to be a blind spot for you with Neptune in this placement. It's really hard to see clearly with Neptune here, because sometimes we have soul connections with others that aren't healthy. Someone that we're going to need to pick up, and where they're not going to be able to really hold their own in a relationship or really be able to pull their own weight, whereas you will end up becoming more of a caretaker or someone who is just constantly believing that this person is going to change, that they're going to get their life together, that they're going to quit alcohol or drugs, and that they're going to get better, where that's not always the case. it's not always the case. And so it's a really slippery slide here. Sometimes that is the case, right? No one gets well on their own. However, no one person should be responsible for holding up another person. I'd also like to point out, Neptune in the 7th, that there's also a very beautiful and positive side of having Neptune in this placement. You are someone who really sees the soul of another person, especially those who are intimately connected with you, in a very non-judgmental way and in a very unconditionally loving way. And that in of itself is beautiful and just an amazing thing to have. So I don't in any means want to say that those are not good qualities. Those are amazing qualities. And that is something that, though, you want to share with another human being that you can have an equal relationship with. The 7th house is also about equality. This is Libra, the scales. So you want to make sure that you have a relationship that feeds your soul. And this can really happen here. This can actually really happen. I've seen beautiful relationships here where it's like the couple, they can like look each other in the eye and they already know what that other person's thinking. Or maybe they have like similar dreams at night, or they just talk about that kind of stuff. Or, they're both artists in some way or shape or form. They just have this beautiful way of being spiritually bonded. With this placement, there can also be a tendency to have extremely high expectations within your relationships where no one person can actually live up to those expectations. So, although on one hand you may be overly accepting of a partner, on the other hand, you could also be so picky and you could have such a beautiful ideal of that other person or what a relationship would look like that you can never truly settle in a relationship because no one can live up to those high expectations. So it's also important to recognize how Neptune can work in that way too, where it can just make something or an ideal seem so perfect that it's not even a real ideal, like it doesn't actually exist. And so that's another thing to look out for, and another reason to have a good group of friends and to be open about your relationships and even about your ideas about relationships. If you're having struggles in that area, definitely pull a friend or a therapist or someone and get their opinion as well, or a few, just to get an outside opinion here with Neptune in this placement. I wanted to also mention Neptune manifests in different ways. It's not just drug or alcohol addiction. You could also be attracted to, highly spiritual people, gurus, any kind of inspirational leader or speaker, maybe a writer or a poet. On the other hand, you could also be attracted to outcasts, to even criminals. I've seen it here where, there's someone in jail that, they're waiting for kind of a thing, or anyone who has a very difficult or even shady background. This is where Neptune, 12th house in Pisces, really just, you love an underdog, you do. And I'm not penalizing you for that because that is beautiful in itself. But just something to take into consideration with this placement when you're looking for someone who is stable in the long term. This is someone who has already dealt with their things, because a lot of people, they deal with their stuff and then they've already evolved and grown on, and now they are functioning healthy people. And so these are just things that you definitely want to think about when entering into a relationship and how it's going to feed your soul. It's also really healthy here to almost focus on spirituality as kind of like almost like the third, like the third person in the relationship. That sounds really weird, but almost like this thing that you can focus on together outside of yourselves, kind of to transcend together into this love of spirituality through your commitment. This is where your relationships can thrive in a huge way. And one last thing that is very important that I want to mention is the 7th house is our shadow side. It's the parts of us that we haven't yet accepted within ourselves, that may have been shunned within us, maybe from our family or early childhood, where it was not accepted. So maybe this is where spirituality wasn't a big thing in your life growing up, or just even maybe if it wasn't spirituality, just truly being intuitive or being in tune with your own feelings or being sensitive or just not really having a goal, just wanting to be. Maybe this is a part of you that this is for a great thing for you to start recognizing and learning how to accept within yourself. Because the real truth here is that you are complete without another person in your life. We all are. Our shadow parts, and when someone lands in our 7th house, it's just a lot of times easier to accept that part in another person that we still are not ready to accept within ourselves. So yes, please start looking at that part of yourself. You're probably a lot more spiritual, a lot more sensitive, a lot more creative and intuitive than you are giving yourself credit for. So with that, I just want to end it and say that this is my interpretation of Neptune in the 7th house. I hope that this was helpful for you. I didn't say this in the beginning, but I also want to remind everyone that no one placement defines us. We are never stuck with, oh, I have that bad placement, so it's always going to be bad. No, with higher conscious and awareness, we can rise above that. So whatever spoke to you in this video, I am glad. Please take that and run with it. Whatever does not speak to you, release it, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.